Hey everybody, welcome back for another week of me talking about Age of Sigmar and Warhammer. Today's going to be a fairly shorter episode recording because at the time of me recording this, I'll be at the Team America practice in Houston, Texas. I always confuse it with Austin for some weird reason. Anyway, Houston, Texas, Team America practice over this weekend for obviously AOS Worlds, which is a team event. And so today's topic, I wanted to go over kind of two freeform things. One of them I want to talk about, kind of a continuation of the last show regarding turn one priority, and how important it is. And we're going to go over one of the, a really big event that's happening basically shortly for AOS in the new edition, and that's the Alliance Open Masters, I believe, and down in Europe. And they put some cool data together to show that kind of a breakdown. And I wanted to hit on some of the points on that and to kind of like not say scream in the air like vindication, but like also mostly because it's a good reaffirming case of a data point where that if what I think the winds are trending and seems that like the overall environment seems to be pointing that way, then we're probably on the right track. And then I want to talk a little bit about the team events in general and why I do them, why I love them, and what you should too. I think team events are a little bit more popular in Europe and a little bit less so in America. And I hope over the next few years we'll definitely change that as they're seeing more and more team events pop up in America. And I don't mean like doubles. I mean like true team events, like 4 to 8 players in a team. So like much like AOS Worlds does it. And I want to talk a little bit and expand on why it matters and why you should care about it. So before I jump straight into the Alliance Open show, I wanted to let me see if I don't fuck this up. I am still kind of new about like one of these days I'll buy a Steam Deck or something to help me like navigate controlling this in real life. But you know what? Let's just do it the old fashioned way. Let's do it live. So first, I want to everybody who's been subscribing and watching the channel. We hit 500 subscribers this last week, which is way more than I thought would happen in this time range. So I really appreciate everybody basically listening, leaving comments, engaging in conversation. And now my Discord handle is somewhere in one of the videos, so you can find it in one of the comments and ping me. I've been getting asked a lot of questions offline of the show, and I feel I'm always, if I can answer them, I will definitely answer all your questions, be it list or whatever. And once again, thank you all. And for this occasion, I'm having a nice little pilsner to thank you all, and hope you guys are all having a lovely Sunday. Obviously, at the time of recording this, it is definitely not 8 in the morning Pacific time. So I'll be in Houston, probably very hungover. Actually, flying back from Houston, probably very hungover. Thank you all, everybody. Mm. Oh, man, that's good. All right. So moving on to the Alliance Open. Business over. I'm going to expand this a little bit because it's probably very tiny. But basically, oh my God, I said it. God damn it. I'm going to eventually I'm going to stop saying that stupid word. So Jeffrey was one of the TOs for the Alliance Open. Basically, once again, put together basic. Oh my God, third time. It's really hard to get rid of these fundamental word repetition thing that your brain basically adjusts to help formulate ideas and also give you time to think. But one day I will stop saying that word. But today is not the day. So he put together all of these data points to talk about like what the overall attendance of this event is. The comment section of the video will have the link to the tweet, obviously crediting him, as well as a link to the Alliance Open army list, basically, and also so you can track like how players are doing if you care to take a look and see what they're doing, since this is kind of like the first really big 3.0 event that we're going to see. One of the big 3.0 events at the start of the season. They do not use BCP, which is another factor. They use Pun, which is their own like little internal tool over there. It's fine. Look, I don't have most people think because I'm a Corsair, I'm on or say I'm a big like BCP like diehard. I don't really care, guys. I don't have any loyalty to any product or whatsoever, as long as it's good and it gets me what I need. Anyway, so long story short, last video we talked about first turn priority and how much it matters, and the changes from LV, which was a two, which had the bounty hunter and expert conqueror as a battalion options, and no longer do we have those options in 3.0 or whatever this new edition we want to call it. And how does that affect the choices people are going to make regarding army list design and drop count? And right at the gate, let's see if I can get my hand correctly. You see this here, this distribution. This is basically a histogram distribution of drops, how many drops players are. And you'll see something, oh, my hand doesn't go over there, but in fact, let's see if I think I have a zoomed in version of this. Yes. It's very kind of pixelated. Sorry, guys. But we went to an average, as he points out, 3.5 drop. But most of the drops are located highest frequency count in 1 drop, second frequency count 2 drops. So even though the average is 3.5, it's actually a misnomer because it takes into these it calculates the average off the really highly weighted ones. In reality, most of the players are going to be playing against a 1 to 2 drop list. 54 players, about 29 of them are 1 to 2 drops. So the 3.5 measure is not a good point of metric here for the average, but it's fine. We can see it visually. Once again, how many? The bounty hunter is gone. Expert conqueror is gone. So what did the people take? Hey, look, 57 battle regiments. Who knew? For context, there's only 54 players. There's more battle regiments than there are players, which makes sense. You can have some lists definitely you can have multiple battalions per player, but it's that's very telling. It's a very telling story about the edition. Only 12 players basically thought, 20 players thought that having an extra enhancement was valuable enough. But only 3 players thought having Galatian Sharpshooter was valuable enough to be significant. Which that's my point. Like the new GHB battalions are so not attractive, except for very niche situations, that you probably the entire game is going to change to, instead of being kind of like this 4 to 7 drop average, down to 1 or 2 drop situations. So that's going to dictate and change the game a lot. And then additionally, I wanted to hit up on this was another cool metric about a champion taken by people in this new edition. You'll notice that most players took more than half effectively took the Tunnel Master, which I think is just people they're just not accustomed to how to deal with the new battle tactics yet. They haven't quite understand like how to deploy, how to army list design around it. So they just went for the easy pick where like I have a JC, I have Tunnel Master, it can easily give me cunning maneuver turn 1. And that's all they took it for. But if as people play it out, I predict this number is going to go down drastically over time. And you're going to see more stubbornness or Ranox fueled by Gurish Rage and leadership of the Alpha. I still think fueled by Gurish Rage is not as good as the other two, even though I'm taking it a lot more just because I want to play around with it. Problem I have a stubborn with Rhinox, it's like totally, it feels like it's for armies that want to have a JC basically sit back and like kind of like prevent opponents' reserve units from scoring while they sit on their home objective, because they count as 10. Because the more forward the JC are, the more likely your opponent also has JC on the objectives, which means that like you're no longer really getting value out of it, since it only works if there's no enemy JC on the objective contesting that active objective. So I have like hard time believing that one so much will be super highly popular for meta. Leadership of the Alpha I can see a lot more being impactful, but I am also kind of worried that Games Workshop might tear that one down a little bit because of the gets factor, since they've basically started introducing a lot more like, hey, do this rally ability more than once per one hero phase, and I think they might tone that down again. That's just my superstition, my opinion. I don't know, but I think it's going to come down between Leadership of the Alpha and Fueled by Gurish Rage. Subheaders and Rhinox feels like most people are going to grow away from it. So they're basically using it for a backfield JC that wants to just babysit an objective, so they don't want people don't want to commit any more resources to like deck chairing it effectively. If you've never heard that term, by the way, chairing just means that a unit by design that's meant to either sit in your backfield to either prevent reserves from landing or just sit on an objective to make it a little bit, make it hard for your opponent to contest just by having a reserve unit and so forth and so forth. But in terms of faction breakdown, they had a pie chart, but as a data scientist and a statistician, I refuse to show any pie chart or talk about any pie chart. Pie chart, the worst visual in existence, in my opinion. So do not use those. And I know that's probably a controversial topic. You know why I don't like pie charts? For context, you can't represent negative numbers in pie charts. It's a terrible measure. Terrible visual. Yes, it's fine for distribution sometimes. I don't do it. This is good enough for me. I think in some tweaks, a matrix is fine for distribution. Anyway, you'll notice that we have actually a pretty good mix of factions, except maybe Def. Def, what was shocking to me was the 0 OBR. And I'm guessing that's because they have, the Bone Shaper isn't technically a JC yet until they fully back that, and maybe they use the internal. I know Tom sometimes his own rules facts, so maybe they've clarified that they are JC for that. But they, I was very shocked about the lack of Def armies, because I think Soul Blight Gravelord is still very good for this edition. Flesh Eater Core is very good. They have some of the best JCs in the game. So I'm just, people are also, afraid of the big, what's the word I'm going for? The elephant in the room now, the Apex Predator, I guess, more likely, Slaves of Darkness, which is, Gloomspite Gits is not the Gloomspite Git. It's not the new one in this event. So, they're probably all afraid of Slaves of Darkness. So let's see how many Slaves of Darkness players we have in Chaos. 6. Well, that's the largest amount. Makes sense. Let's see if we have a good breakdown. So Chaos is Chaos is interesting. It's basically you could just line it up based on which book came out when. So Slaves of Darkness, most numbers of armies. Disciples of Zinj, second more recent book, right? And then Skaven came out before it. And then after that, before that, Maggotkin, and then Slash, I think, and then Maggotkin, and then Blaze of Corn. Beast of Chaos just about to come out, so it's kind of funny representation. The older the book is for Chaos, the less likely it's played. This event is basically the conference. It's not so the case for Order, which you still have 5 Stormcast players. So, I mean, I know people always gripe about Stormcast being bad. It's not that they're bad, guys. It's that if you want to go 5-0, you have to play that army with 0 mistake. It has very little avenue for mistake. It punishes you for playing it badly. And it has probably some of the toughest matchup pairing situations. It can have one of the most one-sided games, and it can have one of the most one-sided games in reverse, just because of how it's designed and how it plays in the current environment. Second most favorite Order army there was Lumineth. Makes sense. People love. I'm willing to bet, and I need. It's the only thing I grab about Pump Hunt is I can't really see which faction is assigned to each player. So I wanted to go dig deeper by faction, but I couldn't just do that on the fly. At least I didn't figure out how to do it. And it's just I kind of wanted to have that detail down of how or what kind of Lumineth player is we're facing. I hope it's not the castle build. For God's sake, people, do something more interesting of your lives. Play another faction. I'm just kidding. This is how Jemmy alienated like every Lumineth player in existence. Or Destruction's funny, as usual. Gets most popular tied with Maw Tribes, which are very good. Iron Jaws, which are still relevant. And Big Wall, which is just Iron Jaws with Cruel Boys. I'm guessing. So I'm looking forward to the result of the events. I'll be watching it remote, not really keeping an eye out a little bit here and there between the practice games I'm going to be playing in Houston. But yeah, shout out to Tom, who's also the head ref for the AOS World Community. He's a great partner, does a lot of work, super fan of the game. We couldn't run this event in Amsterdam without him, so he puts on a great show. You should go check him out. It's Alliance Open Tom. I'll put both their Twitter handles, him and Jeffrey's, into the comment section. And hopefully you guys will give them a follow this weekend for the event. And since this is published on Sunday, it'll be just in time for the result, because I think they'll be done. All right. let's talk about uh, team events and what it means to me. What it means to me. Let's see. Did I do this right? Yeah, I did do this right to an extent. um. Okay. I just probably move my face away from the important scene in this picture here. There we go. There we go. Maybe we'll hide Sigmar a little bit because he's a dude that needs no fame and glory. Obviously, the theme of today's video is supported by Slaves of Darkness, your new boogeyman, which is also my local nickname apparently here in the Pacific Northwest. So that's why I went with that. But anyway, team event. Why do I think they're important? One of the things I love about GTs is the opposite reason why I love team format. GTs are a great way to test player skill, but they're also a great way to be lucky. Like I've won many events because of pairing situations. Like I got paired into a player who I would say was equal to or greater skill, but because of my matchup and redesign, is so one-sided that like I don't necessarily have to. I can get away with making enough mistakes to win the game and still move on to there's a factor of like cushioning basically that happens in GT, and it's usually tied to the pairing system. You can be not the greatest player on the planet, but if your army is like kind of like the counter to that guy's army, you can play badly and still win. It's not so the case in team event, and this is why I truly love team event, because while your team can control some pairing strategy, you're not always gonna be randomly stumbling into a bad matchup. You're sometimes like some teammates, you're gonna just have really bad matchup. That's just how the pairings went down. And for context, for those who don't know how the team pairings usually works, is basically you have an individual from each side, from each team, that know that they're going to be playing amount of tables during a round. So let's just say 4 tables, and each they basically flip a coin when whoever is the winner gets to choose if they're going to actually it varies from event to event. At Worlds it doesn't do it this way. Both captains put down a player that's going to defend, the so-called defender, but it's not really a defender. I don't. It's just not really a better word for it. And secretly putting down like pointing up those 2 players secretly, and then they reveal them simultaneously. So like let's say my side put Maggotkin down, my opponent put Fire Slayers. Those 2 armies aren't going to play each other. What they are going to play is the next order of operation, which is then both captains or both elected officials in a sense get to put down 2 more armies down from their roster to attack whatever that defender card their opponent put down. Then each captain, after they flip those 2 cards and hand them to each other's captains that their decisions have been made about which 2 they're committing to, each captain then picks one of the 2 to play against the defender. And then the card that doesn't get picked gets given back to the captain for the next pairing for the next table. So there's an element of resource management that happens in the team event that never happens in the GT, right? Because there's that pairing, game in a sense. But what the pairing actually does is it forces players to sometimes play really one-sided mission, like pairings, and what the skill set of each of those players. It's not necessarily to just win; it's to basically keep the game very tight, because most team events use point differentials across all of the games to decide which team won. It's not who necessarily wins the most games. It's about who wins by the most, right? Is what it comes down to. And for me, that's my favorite part of the team event is that I know I'm going to have potentially 4 or 5 terribly one-sided games against me. And it's my job to find a way to keep it tight or even win against some players who are hopefully of equal, in terms of AOS Worlds or, greater skills. Doesn't matter where I'm playing. I try to never make the assumption I'm a better player than that person, because it's just stupid. Like you're just going to lose the game if you make that assumption. It's not about like, but I respect it. It's just you're just going to if you underestimate opponent's ability, you're going to just lose. And that's happened to me multiple times. So I've learned to not do that. That's it. But moral of the story is the reason why I love team events is because it's a true modicum or true system to measure player skill. it's not, most people are going to think, well, it's like that. You like it. What are you going to base that metric on? It's like, well, if you have a player who basically goes in and has nothing but what we call like red matchups, which are just effectively the kind of like most one-sided like pairing, and keeps winning, losing the game, or even keeps winning the game, but mostly keeps losing the game by only a few points, he's doing fantastic, right? Because the name of the game isn't necessarily to win. The name of the game is to keep the game tight. If you're probably the losing party in that pairing, and if you're the winning party, you need to win big. And so, in a sense, like I like the team format because of that. It's super enjoyable, for having that extra resource management through pairings, but it's also creates these situations where you might have like this really really bad army from like all perspective of a GT mentality, because it's designed to only play in certain missions, and it's in this maybe also designed to play against certain armies or certain pairing strategy. So from a GT perspective, it's like this is so bad designed in terms of one way or more than the other, that like it's just not going to do well in a GT format. But in a team event, it might do just fine, or even better than fine, because you might be designing the list to play on certain missions every round, because you know what the rounds are going to be and the missions are going to be played each round. You might also designing it to play against certain armies that you want to remove out of equation. Like, I'll give you a context. Let's say we're in a meta where ward saves are super relevant, and like everybody loves playing ward saves. And all of a sudden, armies that have waste and negate ward saves are significantly more interesting. They're a nice little like kind of like not necessarily going to make the game super one sided, but they have this like one extra power up that basically they're paying for a mechanic that crushes the other side's kind of point investment. So you're if in the grand spectrum, if you think of it, like I'm getting some efficiency in my investment of points that my opponent is not. And that's the logic behind those kind of like situations. So you might not create a whole team of nothing but negating ward saves, but you could create like half the team, and then you're trying to force your opponent's team to have to pair into one of those with whatever. Like, say I'm playing Fire and all of a sudden I'm playing against Bone Splitters, Strackfoot, which negates all my ren and all big stabbas, or sorry, not negates my ward saves, and all big stabbas, which have a high ren, which gets any kind of. And it's just like, cool, I'm playing a game where I paid a premium for my ward saves that I just don't get. Right? Like that's the point. In the team setting, you can have these matchups, and my job as the Fire Slayer player is to how do I not lose badly that game, and hope that the rest of my teammate has better pairing situation and they can win bigger points. So the mentality at the table changes very drastically, because now you're fighting tooth and nail for points. You're not necessarily trying to just do Hail Mary plays every round. If you like, because that's kind of like the approach of the GT. If you're playing against an army that's vastly matchup dependent wise much better than you, from a purely like Fire Slayers Bone Splitter situation we just described, your goal to maybe win the game is to just basically take the most Hail Marys you can get, because in the long run you're just going to lose the game just due to the fact that their list is designed, is so much more efficient than yours. So your job is to basically take Hail Marys and see if they pay off. And that's not really rewarded in a team setting. It can be, but it's also just better to just keep the points tight and fighting for points instead of trying to necessarily to fight your opponent. And that's the difference between what I like about GT and team mechanics is the game is approached very differently, because you're not playing for these wins, you're playing for points. And I know that sounds crazy, because most players would think, well, is that the same thing in GT? Yeah, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really, like, most people focus like, did I go 5-0? I did it. I am a winner. Doesn't matter where you ended up on the roster. It'd be cool if you're in it to the top, but 5-0 is what we care about. 4-1 is what we care about. We don't really care about the point differential, like many points do you win by. We all think that's like kind of a, pardon the French, a cock measuring contest. If you really care about like the points you win by, it's like, did you go 5-0? Like, we don't like, as a community, we decided that measuring points is irrelevant for GTs, because sometimes the pairings are so randomly one-sided that measuring points is kind of a silly like mechanism, because just because you have more points than that other person, it doesn't make you a better player. And they're right in a GT format, but in team format, that is not true at all. It is the opposite. You literally have to fight for points. So the game is not about winning necessarily. It's just about collecting as many points as you can, and that's how your team progresses to the round. And it completely turns your brain into thinking about the game very differently. And I think that it makes better GT players. I honestly think team formats make players better at GT because if you teach them to keep fighting for points and how to play a game where they're completely on the back foot, you're going to make a lot less mistakes because you're going to build instinctual reactions to decisions you're making that like you would never be necessarily face in a GT scenario. And this is why I think America, especially America, needs more team events because it makes better players in the long run. And it's a ton of fun. Like for God's sake, you take some photos. So we look at some of the photos of the Vegas team event that Gareth Thomas, from SoCal Open or Old Town Throwdown, sorry, put together, and then the one that was in SoCal, he also ran. Like people are having a blast. There's nothing more community based than having a team event because you're out there to just know you just win the event as a team, but you're also out there to have fun as a team. And while we can recreate a modicum of that community basis in GTs, it's a lot more accessible and easily accessible in a team format. So yeah, that's been 26 minutes of recording, so I wanted to make sure I would keep it under 30 minutes. I'm sorry there will be no list review video today because I am unfortunately traveling this week and I just did not get a chance to prepare a list I really wanted to talk about. But next week we will be back to regular schedule, your regular scheduled videos. Anyway. And on that note, I'm gonna have another sip of this beer. Thank you all for coming and attending. I hope you guys have a great Sunday, and I hope to see you all soon. And I'm sure by the time I record this next video, I'll have a little bit more gray hair on my beard just because it's team practice and I was stressed out during it. And I have a lot of fun though. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching. And thank you for all the subscribers. All right, peace.